Good day, everyone. Welcome in physical science. So, before we start, we'll be having our pre-test. Choose the letter of the best answer. Write the chosen letter on a separate sheet of paper. 1. A chemical change that occurs when two or more substances combine to form a new substance. A. Activation energy. B. Chemical kinetics. C. Chemical reaction. D. Product. That is letter C. 2. The measure of how fast is the change in the concentration of the reactants or products in a chemical reaction. A. Activation energy. B. Activation rate. C. Chemical reaction. Letter D. Concentration. That is letter B. 3. The substance that enter into and is altered in the course of a chemical reaction. A. Catalyst. B. Enzyme. C. Product. D. Reactant. So the answer is letter D. 4. The number of particles present in a given volume of solution. A. Catalyst. B. Concentration. C. Product. D. Temperature. So the answer is letter B. 5. The measure of how fast or slow a reaction happens. A. Activation energy. B. Collision theory. C. Particle size. D. Rate of reaction. The answer is letter D. 6. Condition that needs to be met for a chemical reaction to occur. A. Substance must be homogeneous. B. Temperature should be kept constant. C. Particles should maintain a certain distance to each other. D. Particles in the substance must collide and have enough energy. That is letter D. 7. The factor that would not affect the rate of chemical reaction. A. Concentration. B. Humidity. C. Particle size. D. Temperature. So that is letter B. 8. The factor that will slow down the rate of chemical reaction. A. Manual steering of the substance. B. Placing substance in a hot water. C. Placing catalyst in ice water. D. Placing reactants in ice bath. So that is letter D. 9. The factor that does not show evidence of chemical reaction. A. Absorption of heat. B. Change of color. C. Change of size. D. Liberation of heat. The answer is letter C. 10. The measure of the average kinetic energy of the particles is in an object. A. Energy. B. Humidity. C. Temperature. D. Thermometer. So the answer is letter C. 11. The substance formed as a result of chemical reaction. A. Product. B. Reactant. C. Resistance. D. Substrate. So the answer is letter A. 12. The measure of how much exposed or area a solid object has expressed in square units. A. Volume. B. Surface. C. Surface area. D. Concentration. The answer is letter C. 13. The substance that is dissolved in a solution. A. Solid. B. Solute. C. Solvent. D. Substance. That is letter B. 14. The component of a solution that is present in a greater amount. A. Sample. B. Solute. C. Solvent. D. Substance. So the answer is letter C. 15. A form of matter that has definite composition and distinct characteristics. A. Atoms. B. Compound. C. Mixture. D. Substance. The answer is letter D. Now, our topic for today is collision theory. For objectives, Number one, define collision theory and describe how it affects the chemical reaction and explain the different factors affecting the rate of reaction. Chemical reactions have been a part of this world ever since everything began. From Big Bang to present day, everything happening around us has something to do with chemical reactions and chemical processes. Chemical reactions are commonly observed in our daily lives, such as in cooking, eating, cleaning, and in the process like respiration, corrosion, and fermentation. Even how our body lives and grows are all but some of the many chemical reactions that take place, although you may not recognize them. This is the reason we need to understand how chemical process takes place, be it naturally occurring or not. This lesson will help enhance your understanding about how chemical reaction occurs and what are the different factors affecting chemical reaction. Now for our activity, so chemical or physical change. Chemical or physical change direction, identify the type of change that describes in each item. So write the word physical or chemical on the right side of the picture. All right, so we have number one, baking soda. So we're going to identify, you're going to write if baking soda is a physical or a chemical. Burning paper. Number three is preparing hot coffee, dissolving sugar in water, and mixing paint to make a new color. Now for our answer, for number one, we have baking a cake. So the answer is chemical. Number two is burning paper, so chemical. Three is preparation hot coffee, physical. Dissolving sugar in water, physical. And mixing paint to make a new color, that is chemical. Another one, we have picture analysis. When we talk about reactions in science, what does that make you think of? Write out a list of your ideas about this picture. So we have here a sandwich. Okay. Next, complete the sentence about the word reaction. So our reaction is when blank. So we'll be having here hydrogen and oxygen molecules combine to form water. So we have hydrogen and oxygen. Then if we combine the two, then it will produce water. Now for our answer for number one. So we have here change of color, presence of mold, okay, rotting or spoiling. For number two, there is a combining of two or more elements to form a compound. So a bond was formed between elements. So when you say a reaction is when a bond was formed between elements. The collision theory. All substances are comprised of millions of tiny particles in a constant motion. These particles are constantly colliding with each other. Not all collisions between particles of reactions results to generation of a product. There are two factors that determine whether a reaction will occur between two particles that are colliding. One, substances or particles of reactants must physically collide with enough energy. Second, substance or particles must come into contact or collide in the correct orientation facing the correct way. The collision theory states that reacting substances must come into contact, or when say collide or collisions, with enough activation energy and in the correct orientation facing the correct way so that their electron shells can rearrange to form the product of the reaction. Therefore, any factor which changes the frequency or energy of the collisions will change the rate of the reactants or the reaction. So we have here factors affecting the formations of the NO, right? So we have from nitrogen gas and oxygen gas. So collision forms products. So we have nitrogen gas plus oxygen gas reacts with, okay, there's a collision, then producing or forming a new product. So we have the NO plus NO. As shown in the pictures, the diatomic nitrogen gas reacts with the diatomic oxygen gas, okay, gas to yield two molecules of nitrogen oxide. The shared atoms from bond by completing the valence shells of both atoms. So we have here collisions do not form products. So we have insufficient energy and we have wrong orientation. So if you're going to do this, so this is what we call wrong orientation. And if you're going to do this, this is what we call insufficient energy. So there will be no forming of products, even if there is collision. A chemical reaction does not take place if the collision between molecules did not have sufficient energy to break the bonds in the reactants and if the molecules are not properly oriented. So we have figure 1 and we have figure 2. So as shown in the figure 1, figure 2, no reaction can take place between two particles if they are far apart. Okay? To form new bonds, atom must come in contact with each other and have correct relative orientations so that the correct bonds are broken. Atoms transfer to the correct position. So we have here for figure 1. So there will be no reaction here, but here there is reaction. But take note, reactions occur only for those are correct relative orientations. What is a chemical reaction? When two particles collide, sometimes a chemical reactions can occur, which means that bonds between two or more particles are broken and reformed, creating one or more new substances. The substances or particles that enter and is changed in the chemical reactions are called reactants, and the substances that are formed are called products. Again, the substance or particles that enter and is changed in a chemical reaction is what we call reactants, while those substances are being formed, that is what we call products. Now here we have a chemical reaction in a photosynthesis through solar energy. So you have here carbon dioxide and water to the process of synthesis. It will produce glucose and oxygen. So this is what we call the reactants, and this is the product. Make sure the reactants and products must be the same. All right, so we have here, how many carbon do we have in the left side or in the reactants? We have, okay, 6. All right, we have here, so 1 carbon times 6, that would be 6 carbon. Now, in the products, it must have 6. So we have here, okay, only 1 carbon is here, so therefore 1 times 6, or we have 6 carbon, so we have 6 carbon equal. For the oxygen, so here, carbon dioxide, the superscript here, okay, it must be subscript. So the 2 must be here, okay? So 2 times 6, that would be 12, and we have 1 times 6, that would be 6. So the total is 12 plus 6 is 18. So the oxygen must be 18 in the product. So let's see. Oxygen, we have 6, and 2 times 6, we have 12. So therefore, 12 plus 6 is 18. So 18 oxygens in the reactants and 18 oxygens in the product. So it's equal. Another one is hydrogen. So we have 2 times 6, 12. So let's see here. We have hydrogen 12. So it's equal. All right. So, but for a chemical reaction to occur, several things must happen. So, number one, the particles must come into contact with one another or collide. So, when they collide, the particles must be lined up by correctly so that the right parts of the atoms or molecules are exposed. If they are not oriented correctly, no chemical reactions will take place. Three, the particles must collide with enough energy to break their chemical bonds. So the amount of energy that must be available for reactions to occur is referred to us as the activation energy. So the reaction rate of the chemical reaction is the measurement of the increase in the concentrations of the product or the decrease in the concentration of reactants as the reaction proceeds over time. Keep in mind that not all reactions occur at the same speed. Some are very slow while others are fast. The rate of reactions also depends on the type of molecules that combine. If there are low concentrations, it referred to the terms in the boldface in the previous statement. So type of molecule and concentration are not related to each other. Maybe the number of molecules of an element or compound, the reaction will be slower. Factors affecting the rate of reactants or reactions. So number one, activation energy. Activation energy refers the minimum energy required for a reactions to take place. When a collision provides energy equal to or greater than the activation energy, a product can form. On the other hand, if the energy of the particles is less than the activation energy, so the collision may not be effective, and they just cold bounce off each other unchanged. So here, the figure shows that a man is trying to push a rock over a cliff. For the man to push the rock, he needs to have enough energy. If the man does not have enough energy, the rock will not move down the hill. This energy needed for a man to push the rock over the cliff represent as the activation energy. So if the activation energy is enough, therefore there will be reaction. But if the activation energy is not enough, there will be no reaction. Temperature. Temperature refers to the average kinetic energy of the particles in a given object. As a rule of thumb, a rise in temperature of 10 degrees Celsius doubles the reaction rate. The rate of chemical reaction increases with increasing temperature. As the temperature increases, collision between atoms and molecules become faster, resulting to buildup of more energy. The increased kinetic energy is equal to or exceed the activation energy, resulting to the more collisions giving rise to a reaction. Now, like for example, we have here arrange the following samples according to the rate of solubility of sugar. So one is the fastest, three is the lowest. So we'll be having one, two, or three. So we have here cold water, and we have here hot water, and we have here tap water. All right, for our answer, the fastest is the hot water. The second is the tap water, and the third one is the cold water. Number three, the rate of a chemical reaction is affected by the concentrations of the reacting substances. The term concentration refers to the number of particles present in a given volume of solution. The concentrations may also mean a measure of how much of this solute, or this is what you call something to be dissolved, is dissolved in solvent, and what was solvent is dissolving medium to form a homogeneous mixture. So a higher concentration means there is more of the solute in the solution. If the concentrations of the reactants is increased, the rate of the reactions also increases. When the number of particles of the reactants is increased, there's a great reaction or chains of particles to collide. So we have here for the first figure here, we have few molecules, so there are few collisions. The rate of the reaction is low. This figure shows we have many molecules, so there are more collisions. The rate of the reactions is great. Number four, surface area and particle size. So surface area in the measure of how much exposure area a solid object has, expressed in square units. In a reaction between a solid and a liquid, so the more finely divided a solid is, the faster is the rate of the reaction. Likewise, as you powder the solid, its surface area becomes greater. Thus, the particles have higher chance of colliding and faster reaction happens. So we have here the figure one and we have the figure two. So we have acid particle and a water molecule, and we have here the magnesium atom. So again, the big one here is what we call the acid particle, and the smaller here, the smaller dot, is water molecule, and the block that would be magnesium atom. So here, the magnesium atom is being compressed in one area, while here the magnesium atoms are being scattered in the area, as well as the water molecule and the acid particle. And this is what we call low surface area, and this is a high surface area. Now for our activity, so factors affecting reaction rate. So the rate at which the reactants are consumed and the products are formed during chemical reactions vary greatly. In this part of the lesson, so we'll be discover how the different factors such as concentration, temperature, and particle size affect the rate of a chemical reaction. So the following video links are experiments that you will watch and observe before answering the activity assessment. So number one, or letter A, effects of concentration. So this is the link. So for letter B, so we have effects of temperature, And this is the link. And effects of particle size. This is also the link. Activity 2, so guide questions direction, answer briefly and concise with the following questions. Part A, effects of concentration. So 1, what evidence shows in that reaction occurs? 2, 3, compare the rate of formation of hydrogen gas in the tube A that contains diluted hydrochloric acid with that of B containing concentrated hydrochloric acid. 4 to 5, explain the effects of concentrations on the rate of chemical reaction. 6, show the correct chemical equations for the reaction of the magnesium, ribbon, and hydrochloric acid. For part B, effects of temperature. So in which temperature of oxalic acid and sulfuric acid mixtures did the potassium permanganate dissolve so faster? 8 to 9, what evidence show that a fast reaction occurs? 10 to 11, how does temperature affect the rate of chemical reaction? Part C, effects of particle size. 12 to 13, compare the speed reactions of a powdered calcium carbonate with that of a lump of calcium carbonate placed in water. 14 to 15, how does particle size affect the rate of chemical reaction? Now, another one is create your own 5-minute experiment video by choosing one of the factors discussed in this lesson. So we have here a rubric for the grading. The video will be scored 1 to 5, being 5 is the highest, and the criteria for grading are as follows. So we have visual, so the video is clear and engaging. Camera shots tell the story visually and no lighting problems. Audio, loudness, and dialogues are balanced. Spoken words show confidence and are convincing. Content, delivery of the content is precisely and complete. Emphasis given should be based on the discussion. Timeliness, the video should consume the required 5 minutes. For every less or added minutes, points will be deducted. For our assessments, a modify true or false. So direction, write the word true if the statement is correct. If false, change the italicized word or group of words to make the statement correct. So we have here number one, so decreasing the concentrations of the reactants increases the collision frequency between reacting particles. So the italicized word here is decreasing. For number two, increasing the concentrations of the substance increases the kinetic energy of the particles that make up the substance. Three, increasing the surface area of the reactant increases the rate of the reaction. Four, raising the temperature of the reaction increases the rate of the reaction by increasing the energy of the collision between the reacting particles. Five, if the reactant particles collide with less than the activation energy, the particles bounce back and no reaction will occur. For part B, identification, so direction, identify what factor affects the rate of chemical reactions in the following situations. So use the choices below by writing the correct letter before the number. So we have temperature A, for B, concentration, for C, particle size. So number 6, the food was refrigerated. So we're going to choose among the three. 7, a coal dust explosion happens in mines. 8, acid rain erodes marble fast. 9, 2 anti-acid tablets neutralize acids faster than one tablet. 10, kindling is used to start a fire. For part C, multiple choices, encircle the letter of the correct answer or write it in the space provided on your notebook. So 11, what condition or conditions must be met in order for chemical reactions to occur? A, collision with proper orientation. B, sufficient activation energy. C, adding more reactant particles. Letter D, both A and B. 12. Which of the following would not increase the rate of reaction? A, increasing the temperature. B, adding catalyst. C, increasing the volume. D, increasing the concentration. 13. Suppose you dissolve zinc in the hydrochloric acid and add more acid than usual, then drop pieces of zinc. What factors does not affect the rate of the reaction? A, surface area of the zinc. B, concentrations of the reactant. C, temperature of the solution. D, amount of hydrochloric acid. 14. Activation energy is the amount of energy required to A, break the bonds between the reacting molecules. B, make the reacting particles collide. C, form the bonds between the product's molecules. D. Convert the reactant to a single product. 15. Why does a candle burn more rapidly when placed in an open jar than in air? What accounts for this reaction? A. Higher oxygen concentration. B. Greater surface area for the jar. C. Increasing the surrounding temperature. And D. Length of the candle. Okay, so for our answer, number one is increasing. Number two, true. Three, true. Four, true. Five, true. 6A, 7C, 8B, 9B, 10C, 11D, 12C, 13D, 14B, 15A. Right, thank you everyone for listening.